You're live. You're going live.
Yes, we are live. Thank you. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to another episode of Chiism Today. I'm Dr. Uwa Osimiri, and I am very, very excited about what we're going to be talking about today. And I have some wonderful guests from Nigeria, and well, one of them has been to Nigeria with us, and the other one is from Ghana, and we're going to introduce them later on in the show. Chiism. Now, somebody asked me, what is Chiism? I think it's important for me to say what Chiism is. Chiism is the African philosophical thought. It's actually an African philosophy of direct communication with the Creator without passing through any medium. And that is to say, right where we are, Chineke is. Now, the founder or propounder of Chiism is K.O.K. Onyoha, or Baja Ahan K.O.K. Onyoha, who is now an honorable ancestor, and I am proud to say is my father. Chiism is the same thing as Godianism. Chiism is the African word for Godianism. So it's the same thing. It's interchangeable. So I don't want us to think it's something different. So Chiism is the African word, and Godianism is English. I want to thank you so much for welcoming us into your space. You know, it is an honor to be in your space, and it is an honor that we don't abuse. We take into consideration your sensibilities, so we try as much as possible to keep it real, but not at the same time make sure that you understand exactly what we are talking about. So today I want to thank first and foremost Chin, the father, Eke, the mother. You see, in Igbo language, Chineke is Chi, the male energy of the Creator, and Eke, the female energy of the Creator. Now, in different cultures, the Creator has a different name. For the Yorubas, it's Olodumare. Then you have Tamona, you have Jinyami, you have Katonda, you have Nkosi, Moari, Uvuzilele, Ukulum. Chineke has a different name in different tongues, but it's the same parent. And we want all of us to understand that we are one, no matter what we call our source of inspiration, no matter what we call, what language we use to identify Chineke. So much is changing. I'll be remiss now. I'll be remiss if I don't thank the ancestors. The ancestors are the reason and the cause for us being here. So we must always give thanks to them for laying the footsteps for us to follow. I want to share an affirmation. I do this affirmation all the time because it is so important for us to understand that what we say about who we are and what our understanding about our relationship with the Creator goes a long way to influence how we act. So this affirmation, I repeat it all the time because I would like you to learn it. And when you learn it, make it a habit to repeat it, particularly when you're challenged. It sort of reminds you of who you are. Thank you, Chineke, Divine Mother and Divine Father, for this wonderful opportunity that we call today. You see, many did not see this day, and we are the lucky few. Is that good? I love it. Thank you for giving me, allowing my chest to lift and come down, because that means I'm inhaling and exhaling. What a gift that is. Many did not see this day. Many were buried yesterday or the day before. But I am walking amongst the living. We all are. That is a reason to give thanks. And let us be reminded that Chineke is power. That means we are powerful. Munachiso. I walk with my God. I walk with my Chi. I walk with my Eke. That means right where I am, power source is. Chineke is peace. I'm peace filled. You see, when I'm happy, I am filled with peace. Joy. Chineke is joy. That means I am joyful. Chineke is truth. That means I am wrapped in her truth. I am manifestation of the divine. Sometimes we are overcome by the challenges we face, but it is important for us to understand that no matter the condition, our minds, no matter the conditioning that we have been fed, the innuendos, the lies, the confusion, as long as we understand that Chineke is great, that condition means nothing. That conditioning means nothing. Greater is the power of Chineke in my body than any affliction. Yes, COVID is dangerous, but it's not more powerful than Chineke. Greater is the spirit of Chineke in my spirit than any spirit in the world. The spirit of Chineke renews, reaffirms, reassures all that I am. All that I am, Chineke is. All that is noble, I am. It is this truth that I claim this day as my divine inheritance. And I say to you, Ise, Ashe, and so it is. Woo! I don't know about you guys. I'm ready to go now. You see, I have to prepare my mind and my spirit for what I have to do today. So much is changing in our world. Any one of us who watch what's going on, it started in the United States. So much is going on. The valleys and the hills are crying for change, a new paradigm shift. And we are the observers. Look at what happened. A man whose life was taken has changed the world. He has changed the world. The objective was to take his life, but instead he's given life to others because change had to come. Because of George Floyd, the world has stood up and they are recognizing you cannot continue to suppress anyone and say all lives matter. If one life does not matter, then all lives do not matter. Somebody say. If you believe that your life matters, then you must expect someone else's life to matter. So what is going on is exciting. It has become abundantly clear. The power is in the hands of the people. Power is now in the hands of the people. It's going to take the people to change our world the way it currently exists. It is the voices of the people that has to be heard. Your voice has to be heard. No longer are we going to sit back and watch the world go by. They are saying no more in Africa. They're saying no more in the United States. They're saying no more in the Netherlands. They're saying no more in Britain. They're saying no more in Germany. No more. Every life matters, yes, but we cannot leave Black lives out of it. Black lives do matter. And that brings us to our topic of discussion today. Africa does matter. And it's going to be up to us to make Africa matter. It appears to me that even us as Africans, how we're thinking about each other is changing. What we think about each other, what we say to each other, how we feel about the continent, even our vision for the future is changing. That's exciting because it's time. It's time for us to begin to look at the role we play in building up our nations all over Africa to bring up the continent. The people whose voices I'm talking about, I'm not talking about the priests. I'm not talking about the voices of the kings. I'm not talking about the voices of the presidents, of the leaders. No, I'm talking about the noble people who, the sons and daughters of Africa, who have not determined now, we as Africans have to rise. And the way we have to rise, we've got to rise together. We can't do it on our own. Africans on the continent must rise with the Africans in diaspora. This is how we're going to build Africa up, by coming together. But by coming together, I don't mean having aspirations that are not attainable. I don't mean having false expectations, going to Africa and expecting to see all these wonderful things already made for you. No. By coming together, we have to ensure that what we're bringing to Africa is what Africans need. And then Africans, when the diasporans come home, we give them what they need to feel connected to the motherland. They're not coming to see anything other than what was taken from them. So that connection has to be real. That connection has to be, the foundation for that connection is Ubuntu. I am because you are because of me. Without you, I'm nothing at all. And whatever you bring to me has to be helpful to me. And whatever I give you has to be helpful to you. To help in the conversation of the moment is, okay, Dibia, you the Onyoha. Well, Dibia, he's going to be okay, Dibia, someday, certainly. Dibia, Otraya, you the Onyoha. Yudi, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. It's so exciting to be alive today. I tell you that, with what's going on in the world right now. I'm very excited, painfully excited, but excited nevertheless. Yeah.
It is exciting. Now, before I want to just quickly ask you this question, because, you know, a lot of people want to come to Africa. But what do you think they need to do when they get there? What do you think that Africans need from the diaspora? And what do the diaspora need from Africa?
The Back to Africa movement, it's as old as, going back to the 19th century, after the slaves were freed here in the United States. There was conversation about repatriating, African Americans back to Africa, for the fact that, number one, you had a lot of people that were free, but nowhere to go. A lot of the free African Americans, had economic issues that they had to deal with. And then you also had the Europeans or white America that did not want them around once they were freed, because they believed that, number one, the country wasn't big enough for them. And then number two, they didn't consider them human enough to stick around and then perhaps enjoy the benefits of freedom. So the idea of moving back to Africa was something that was hatched with some African Americans, along with white America, to repatriate African Americans back to Africa. And of course, two areas were identified. One was Sierra Leone, and the other one was Liberia. And as time went on, for over 30 years, you had a lot of African Americans that went back to Africa and settled there. And of course, it wasn't necessarily a true smooth transition, because when they got there, they had a myriad of issues that they faced. I think one of the most important issues that they faced was medical. Malaria, which killed a lot of African Americans that went over there. Some of them got over there and then felt like this isn't the paradise that they were promised, because of just the differences in the culture. When you're born here in the United States, you go through the chattel slavery, and you're used to living a certain way and doing things a certain way. You've lost over, a couple of centuries, your culture, everything that kind of made you African, besides your skin color. And then to find yourself in a position in Africa where you feel like you don't fit in, with the indigents, even though some of the indigents, particularly some of the chiefs out there, welcomed African Americans. You still had some Africans that felt that the African Americans coming back to Africa was an economic challenge. They lost a lot of land to those people being repatriated from African Americans. So you had it both ways. You had people that were against it in Africa. You had people that were for it in Africa. And then even in the United States, you had people that were for it, and then you have people that were against it. And most of those people that were against it in the United States were against it because they felt that, not because they didn't want to go to Africa, but they felt that the movements are trying to repatriate them to Africa because they figured all of it weren't going to go. And a lot of them, especially the middle class that had attained the level of economic prosperity in the North, also felt that the idea of repatriating them back to Africa meant that they were not going to be able to help their brothers and sisters that are over here in the United States going through this economic pain and all that. And then, of course, in the 30s, you know, the lynching of African Americans were, you know, at a level that just wasn't sustainable, you know, and of course helped to bring up the you know, civil rights movement and all that. And then, of course, people in the 20s like Marcus Garvey, you know, formed an organization that was actually tasked with trying to repatriate Africans. And the funny thing is that a lot of those people that were in those organizations never made it to Africa. Marcus Garvey never made it to Africa to settle. You know, he was exiled and all that. But now I feel like the onus is really on Africans. You know, we first of all, right now we're like one-legged wrestlers, right? We need our brothers and sisters in diaspora to feel whole again. And our brothers and sisters in diaspora need us to feel home again. Pan-Africanism deals with one prominent feature, and that is unity, dividing a united house, right? The African American needs to feel that they have a stake in Africa and they need to feel welcomed. And then the Africans need to make the African Americans feel welcome so that they will see the benefits of coming back to Africa to help develop her. What makes the Jewish people prominent all over the world is the idea that they're united, right? They suffered the same humiliation, the same prejudices, the same racism all the way in Europe before Hitler even came around, right? So they see a common suffering among Jewish communities all over the world and understood that for them to overcome and be able to sustain themselves, they needed to be united. So Pan-Africanism and what the Jews did is not that much different. Based on one very specific fact that Israel opened up its borders and make sure that those Jews that are outside of Israel that wanted to come back home had all the tools necessary to make a living for themselves once they get to Israel and be recognized as part of the Jewish community, as brothers, as sisters, not seeing any difference between the Jews in their supposed homeland and those that are in diaspora. Africans need to do the same thing. And I think that the onus is on us in Africa to make sure that our brothers and sisters in diaspora feel that they have an equal stake as those of us in the motherland to come home and help build her. To me, one of the greatest detriments to the development of Africa is the fact that we still have not, at least on level of, I wouldn't say principal level, but I'll say the involvement of the governments in Africa to invite our brothers and sisters in diaspora to come to Africa with promises of, if you come to Africa, we're going to make sure that you're not lacking of anything. We'll have to make sure that we have the infrastructure to be able to support you, you know, electricity, water systems, all those things that are economically viable and those things that are necessary to build a nation. That has to be available. Now, even if it's not available, understanding what happened to Africans through colonization, how our systems were destroyed, how we were never allowed to evolve and take a rightful place in the universe, I am very confident that the African American, the Africans in diaspora, also understand that Africa was also destroyed by colonialism and, of course, the slave trade that, for the most part, took all the able-bodied men and women from Africa and did not allow us to evolve as fast as other communities that did not experience slavery did. So a lot of things were taken from us, and I am confident that African Americans understand that. I don't believe that most African Americans that want to repatriate to Africa are coming there with expectations of finding a McDonald's or Burger King or whatever it is that Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever it is that made life livable over here. I am very positive that they understand that we too were, affected by colonization and slavery, and don't really have any other expectation other than coming to Africa and experiencing things that are culturally relevant, those things that made them, that defines their Africanness, that they cannot find wherever they are abroad. They expect that in Africa, and it is our duty to make sure that what was taken from our brothers and sisters in diaspora is provided to them when they come to Africa. I don't think any African American wants to come to Africa and then you take him to church on Sunday. I do not believe that they want to come to Africa and expect to have a Pizza Hut or whatever it is that they were doing over here. Because, you understand what I'm saying? Because if those things were that important to them, they would not be thinking about repatriating to Africa. The only reason that the diasporan brothers and sisters want to repatriate to Africa is to be able to experience what they feel was taken from them and to feel a level of dignity. And I think as Africans in the homeland, it is our responsibility to make sure that those brothers and sisters in diaspora understand that we want them to come home. They have a level of knowledge from the West that is needed in Africa. It's sort of like you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are certain things that are going in the motherland that is not appropriate for its development. There's certain knowledge that those Africans in diaspora have first-hand knowledge of that we need in Africa to continue to move us forward. So personally speaking, I know Dr. Nobantu has been to Africa, and we've interacted with Dr. Nobantu for quite a few years now. Yes. And we know the level of joy in her heart every time she goes to Africa. And she just keeps going because every time she gets to Africa, one way or another, her spirit is fed, and it gives her the impetus to do it again.
That's right.
She's getting something in Africa that she cannot get over here, right? And that is the idea that, number one, you come to a continent that has a lot of people that look like you, and that you don't face certain economic or racial challenges in Africa that you do when you're outside of it. At least back home, you feel like you belong. Everybody wants to feel like they belong somewhere, and it is my prayer and my hope that African Americans, the Africans in Europe, wherever you are, Jamaica, Haiti, whatever it is that you are, that Africa becomes the number one priority for your existence, and hoping that people in the motherland will be able to send the same message to tell them, welcome home. We need you as much as you need us.
That's right. You know, when they took our people from Africa, we lost some very quality human beings. Yes, if we are struggling today, it's because of all those people that we lost.
Exactly.
And all we're saying is we want you home. I mean, you know, like you said earlier, we say onyo to chimba. A one-legged man cannot go into battle. We need all the legs we got, you know. So it is. Thank you, Adibia. I would like to introduce a woman that I had the pleasure of traveling to Nigeria with in 2018, Chief Dr. Nobantu Ankoanda, and she is an African-centered educator. What a blessing it was to go to Nigeria with her, because, oh my God, we had a wonderful time. Oh, she'll tell you about the challenges, but she'll also share with you the fun we had. We went under the auspices of the NWALOTA Project. NWALOTA is an acronym for Nigeria Welcomes Africans Living Outside the African Continent. And what we're trying to do is welcome the diaspora back to Africa and give them an opportunity to own land, give them an opportunity to build businesses, become a part of the community, be one with the community, and meet all the kings of the different villages that are going to be welcoming them. As a matter of fact, we were supposed to have been going this December, but because of the COVID-19, a lot of those things have been postponed. But anyway, without further ado, I want to welcome Chief Dr. Nobantu Ankoanda, who was made chief of the people, Chief Nwanne Dinamba of the eastern part of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us, Chief. How are you?
I'm great. I'm wonderful. And thank you so much. I'm honored to be a part of this show, you including me in this particular show. Again, my name is Dr. Mama, as they call me, Mama Nobantu Ankoanda, Chief Jinaba. And I am also a mother of 5 children and grandmother of 8. And I became awake back in 1968 when as I was a student at UC Berkeley, I was a protester there. And I protested my last semester at UC Berkeley. I almost didn't graduate, but we were protesting to have African studies, women's studies, Asian studies, because we were sick and tired of just getting Western civilization studies. So that became my first introduction to protesting. And after that, after I graduated, um, I my first trip to Ghana was in 1969. I was just out of UC Berkeley. I was so determined to go to Africa because of my experience and because I knew I needed to know more about who I was. And I was able to go. And I didn't have money at the time, but when I saw the article in the little local Berkeley Barb, as they called it, I said, I'm going. I don't care how, I'm going some kind of way. And I learned a little trick that the sociology department, anthropology department, psychology department didn't talk to each other. So I went to each one of the departments and said, and I had to tell a little white lie. I already had $200. I just needed 200 more or 300 more. I'm not sure exactly what I asked for, but every single department gave me money. And I went to my church. They gave me money. And I was able to go. I was the youngest person of 175 African Americans who had ever come. We were the largest ever go to Ghana at one time. And included on that flight was Betty Shabazz and the Eric Lincoln. And we were very powerful. Of course, when we went to visit, everything stopped. The villagers would look at us and we would look at them, But we realized then that there was some challenges because they did not know really about our history and our culture. So there were times when we would leave the hotels and we go out to the beach, way away from the technology we had at that time. And we have these long talks between the Ghanaians and ourselves to tell them what happened to us when we were brought, because many of the educational system doesn't teach that, even to this day. So from that point on, I ended up starting my own schools, African-centered schools. I co-founded about 3 independent African-centered schools in the city of East Palo Alto that we nicknamed Little Nairobi, because it was a mecca of culture at that time. Very famous people had been authors and historians come to our community. And so I had the school up until I left there, those different schools, when I came to Atlanta. But I went back in 1982 before I came to Atlanta. In 1982, I took all of my children, all 5 of my children. I needed to know, I wanted them to know Africa through their own eyes and not through Tarzan and all those negative images of African people that was across the media and across TV. So that's why I took all 5 of my children. And how I got there, I didn't have money then either. I was on welfare. But I managed to figure it out. I managed to get all of them there and gave them something that they'll never forget. And then in 2001, I went to South Africa for the World Congress Against Racism in Durban, South Africa. And that was another kind of a experience that I was able to share with the community when I came back home. And as I did travel again after that. And of course, you guys know in 2001, that's when 9/11 went down. And so very little attention was given to what happened in the World Congress Against Racism in Durban, because what we talked about was there's racism globally, which is where we are now in terms of what happened with the brother that, was so horribly taken away from us. So anyway, coming back to the next travel was in 2018. I went to the Pan African Federalist Movement pre-Congress, which is about unifying Africa from the ground up, from the grassroots up. As we see people rising up across the globe, we like to see our African people rise up in the same way that we need to have a united Africa. That is our only option. And as Udi talked about Israel and how no matter where Jewish people are on the continent, they can always come home to Israel. And I think
That's
that
right.
that's the same thing that needs to happen on the continent. Every African diaspora should know they should be able to come to Africa, having to go through that visa thing, and they should pay a lot of money to get there. Every single person in the diaspora, whether they're in Latin America, South America, North America, Canada, should be able to come, and they should be able to go any place they want on the continent. And we also need to understand that we do have to give back to Africa. The exchange goes both ways. The reciprocity that needs to happen goes both ways. So there is that need to happen. And then, fortunately, I was able to go in December again with Dr. Uwa, who invited us to come for the AWAC, African Women's Educational Consortium. And that indeed was another very, very good experience for me. And it had its advantages and it had its disadvantages. And it was really nice to be able to be with good people with like minds, understanding the importance of the relationship that needs to happen between the diasporans and the continental Africans. And so I want at some point to get my citizenship in Nigeria. And because I was married to a Nigerian for 8 or 9 years, I found out that all I needed his permission to get, I believe, was a passport for at least 10 years. And he's already given me permission to do that, even though we're no longer together. So I was appreciative of that. And then the challenges that I saw there was walking into department stores and seeing all these white dolls and seeing how the continental Ghanaians were just wanting to get these white dolls for their children, and that just really shocked me. You could rarely find a black doll anywhere, and the Christianity that has overtaken our people there to the point where God is going to take everything, and there's no action. There's nobody that's going to do anything. They're just waiting for God to take care of everything. But God help those who help themselves. That's what I was taught. So
I want to ask you a question.
Yes.
Ask you a question. What? First of all, let me reiterate. You shared so much, but I have to say thank you so much for coming, because you came with and I suppose it had to do with you having been there before, but you came with no expectations. You just came, and it seemed like you wanted to see what was there, and when you did see it, your attitude was, okay, we've got to change this. Not, oh my God, why is it like this? No, your thing was, okay, this is not right. I heard you say that over and over and over. This is not right. We've got to change that. But tell us a little bit about your experience in our home when you were made chief.
Oh my God. That was like a out-of-body experience. I couldn't believe I was actually there. It was incredible. I did not know that was going to happen. I had no idea that I was going to end up being crowned a chief in a village or in a town. I think it was Abia State.
Yes.
And watching the whole ceremony take place from the beginning to the end. And I do have footage that I need to share with my community, watching all the chiefs come in and learning that I was the first woman. And then, of course, Dr. Uwa's daughter, Kelly, was the next woman, the second woman to be a part of this chieftainhood. And she was the youngest. And I guess, as an elder, I was the first woman. That indeed was, I don't even have the words to say what it did to me. It was humbling, a very humbling experience to be crowned and to kneel before the highest chief there, and understanding that chiefhood requires responsibility. You just don't glorify the fact I'm a chief and come back home and say I'm a chief. No.
No, I want to share what you did, what you've done with your chieftaincy, and I want everybody to know it. Dr. Nobantu has selected an organization of women, and she's funding them She gives them money every month to support their business. And it was very important to these people because right now with the COVID thing, many of them are not working. So whatever she was able to give them is so helpful to them, and they're very, very grateful. And she didn't make it a one-time thing. It is an ongoing thing for her, you know, and that's the spirit. That's the spirit of going home, not going and expecting just to get, but going and seeing the problems and be willing to help. So we're very grateful. Those women are so grateful to you, Dr. Nobantu. They talk about you, you know, Mama Nobantu, you know. So we're very, very grateful for that. Yudi, what questions do you have? Because you know that Dr. Nobantu went to Nigeria, and you went to Nigeria with us.
Yeah. I was there in 2018, you know, for the trip to Nigeria, NWALOTA pilgrimage. And I think what really impressed me with Dr. Nobantu was the way she went without this great expectations. You know, she went about her business like, I have something to bring to the table, I have something to offer, and I'm going to do the best that I possibly can. You know, number one, to be heard, and then number one, to be given the opportunity to be helpful. That's what I found really, really intoxicating about her presence, you know, in Abia State in Nigeria. And quite frankly, this is exactly what I expect. And I think that most African Americans that come to Africa have that mindset. We have something to bring to the table to help to develop Africa and make Africa a welcoming place, a better place for all diaspora. Every diasporan African ought to be able to go to Africa, regardless of which country they land in, and be made to feel like they're at home. You know, African Americans or British Americans or wherever the diasporan Africans, Jamaicans or what have you, whatever it is that they are, when they go to Africa, they're not going there saying, I'm from Ghana, so I'm going to Ghana. I'm from Nigeria, so I'm going to Nigeria. Because that lineage, unless you go into the ancestry that come and all that stuff, and then find out where most of your, you know, DNA comes from, then you could make that determination that you want to go to this specific place in Africa because of what your gene says. I mean, either way, whether that's how you decide to go to Africa or if you just want to go to Africa, I just feel like personally, every diaspora African ought to be able to go to Africa, land in any country they want to, make to feel whole, just like the Jews are made to feel whole when they go to Israel. If Dr. Nobantu decides, you know, I want to go to Senegal and put roots down in Senegal, the people of Senegal should be able to welcome Dr. Nobantu as one of their own. If she decides,
that's right.
It doesn't really matter. This is not about ancestry DNA. This is about the fact that our brothers and sisters outside the homeland need to feel welcomed, and they need to come back home because they have something that we need, and we have something that they need. And one of the things that they need is to come to Africa and experience being African in the homeland. Experience those things that are culturally palatable that will inspire any African American or any diasporan African to go to Africa and experience their history and reconnect with their past so that they could feel whole again. That should be the premise behind this movement. And the Pan-African aspect of it is unity, to unite a divided house, whether it's positive, whether it's negative in terms of the division, but we're dislocated right now. And we need to come back home, come back and make ourselves whole. Like you said earlier on, a one-legged wrestler never wins so many fights, you know, and it would be a good thing to just have an environment in Africa through, by the way, not just NGOs, but through government policies, right? Putting policies in place that will make this possible so that we, both in diaspora and in the motherland, can feel whole again. Because if we do not connect on that level, I'm afraid that no matter what it is that we do, it's going to be fruitless. It just will be.
That's right. So, and you know, we had there's a different aspect of this conversation that I want to kind of meander into. The Dr. Sophia Chrocheron is supposed to have been, she's in Ghana and she seems like she's having difficulty with the technology getting calling in. She's been in and it cuts her off in and off, So I just want to give you a little background of Dr. Chrocheron. Dr. Chrocheron was was in charge of Chiism in the state of Michigan. And then she moved to Ghana, and she has been, well, actually she moved to, I believe it was Kenya. Then from Kenya, she moved to Ghana. And she says that, yes, one of the things that she wants to share with other Africans who may not have been to Africa before, but want to come. One of the things that she wants them to know is have no expectations of anything. Go there to learn. Dr. Nobantu, am I right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
What she says is that we should go to Africa to learn. No expectations of, well, actually, no wrong expectations. I mean, Africa is developed. Let's be clear on that. Africa is beautiful. We got beautiful countries, beautiful cities. We have all of that. But when I take people home, I also want them to see the places where opportunities exist, where not all development is still in a foundational level, where people can benefit from what you bring to them, and you will benefit from what you can do there as well. You've got the manpower, you've got the resources. There's so much that you can do as an African, a diasporan African going home. But one of the things that she wanted to talk about is the fact that a lot of individuals come thinking, they have the mindset of Wakanda, and then when they don't see Wakanda, they get upset. Well, Wakanda is in the mind, okay? Wakanda is in your mind, something you can create. That's not to say that Wakanda doesn't exist already. We got some countries in Nigeria that are, in Africa, that are absolutely marvelous to behold, okay? But don't come in with the Wakanda concept in your mind and looking for something mysterious instead of looking at what does exist. You see what I'm saying? Look at the good things that do exist, and where there is a challenge, make it a point of duty to come up with good ideas to make things right. I don't like taking, there was a woman, I don't want to call names, that I took to Nigeria, and I've got to be honest, I was ready to send her home. She had to go. It was horrible. She found fault with everything, and I had to remind her that the African Americans, when they went to America, they built America. America was not, what we're looking at today when they went there. It was on their backs that America was developed. So if you come here and you see something that's not done that you would like to see, then be the one to come up with the idea. Make it happen. Then we had another guy that came from Fisk University. I don't know if you remember that. They came to see His Holiness, and
yeah, in
there were two of them. One was a European, Dr. Philip Singer,
yeah.
who was a professor of anthropology at the University of what was that university? Oakland University. So he came to see my dad, and then the professor, I don't want to call his name, I can call Professor Singer. He's no longer with us, but he's now an ancestor. The professor.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, you know who I'm talking about. Well, the African American professor, we were shocked when he came to the village. He didn't want to do anything. He wanted, everything to look like a hotel. And if he didn't, he was not having it. He condemned the people. It was awful. And then but when my parents woke up the next day, he was gone. He got on a plane and went back to America. So you see, there are such people, and that's what they call the ugly American. There are such people. They are individuals who are the opposite of Dr. Nobantu, the opposite of Sophia, Chrocheron, there are many who go there and they stay, but there are many who come in with the worst idea of what they think Africa is, what they think Africa should be, what image they've conjured up about Africa. And when they don't see that, then, they don't want to, be helpful.
I just want to interject, for those diasporan Africans that want to go back home. I think it's very important for them to understand that the Middle Passage affected Africans in the homeland just as much as it affected them. If you're African American, you are African before you became an American. If you're from Haiti, you are African before you became Haitian. If you're Jamaican, you are African before you became Jamaican. The experiences of diasporan Africans is not that much different from those in the motherland, except for the fact that the experiences that you had, the negative experiences, were outside of Africa. But we went through 400 years of being disjointed because our brothers and sisters left Africa 400 years ago. We needed them. The able-bodied Africans left Africa. Then after that, colonization. As much as things were bad in diaspora, in Haiti, as bad as it was in Jamaica, in the United States, in the Caribbean for Black folks, can I please interest you in the story of what happened to the Congolese under the Belgian king? Where 2 million Africans were amputated, over 10 million Africans killed in the span of 5 years. Where in the world can you record that much brutality on anybody? Not even Hitler achieved that kind of feat in 5 years. There were 6 million Jews that we know that died. Stalin killed more than 50 million of their own citizens. So there's a lot of things that happened in World War II, a lot of dead bodies that were just not attributed to Adolf Hitler. They were all the strong men. The strong man in Portugal in 1939. There's a lot of things that happened. What about the Japanese and the people they killed in Indochina and the Philippines? But we talk about these atrocities. We talk about them. We never talk about what happened to the Africans on the homeland. I'm just saying that diaspora Africans should understand that the condition that you may find Africa in today on the negative side, in some countries where there's not enough economic development and all that, please understand that what you see is a result of slavery and a result of colonization, and that we have shared experiences.
Yes.
Number one is unity. We must see ourselves as African Americans, as experiencing what African Americans or diasporan Africans experience, and diasporan Africans must see the African in the motherland experiencing equally what they experience. Only when we understand our shared misery through history can we heal, unite in a Pan-African mindset to be able to now travel to Africa from diaspora and say, I have a responsibility to do what I can to make sure that Africa grows. And we on the motherland have to do the same thing.
Have to do the same. I think it's very important for us all to understand coming to Africa to live is your prerogative, but having Africa as your homeland is a mandate. Understand that you are a part of Africa. I don't care where you live in the world. Africa is your home. Choosing to live there is your prerogative. You understand? But to build it up, we all have to come together. We all have to be willing to build businesses so that we can provide employment. Technology, the healthcare certainly needs diasporan Africans in it, because right here in the United States, most of the doctors that you find in the hospitals are from Africa. Yes, we needed to go back home, but we need the African Americans to know that if our own people go back home and start working in those hospitals, that we have quality hospitals that they can come back to. I say that because somebody did say it's a problem because when we get sick, the hospitals are not where it's supposed to be. So we Africans have to provide our people. Just because we're Africa doesn't mean African Americans just have to come and love it. We have also got to provide them, you know, what they need. It's like, and I'm going to be honest with this. I want to support an African store. Oh, yes, I do. But if you're not going to give me quality service, I'm not supporting you.
Yeah.
You don't understand? We, the Africans, have to treat our own people with dignity and respect so that they will be willing to come. Whatever those things are that they get in diaspora that we can do something about, then we must do it at home. Welcoming diaspora and Africans to Africa requires a sense of responsibility on our part. Indigenous Africans need to know that you have work to do. It's not just them coming and doing for you. You too have work to do. You got to make sure your roads are good. You have to build up your infrastructure. You've got to be competitive. Set up good educational schools. If you want them to come, have something for them to do where they bring their own skill sets to develop it even further. So you go as far as you can go. And then when you open the door, as they're coming in, they add to what you have. Dr. Nobantu, what do you say about that?
I think that the culture of the continent needs to be readily available when people come.
Yes.
My experience going to obvious state, I couldn't find very many artifacts to bring back home. I mean, the tourism industry needs to become much more than it is, particularly in that area.
Yes.
You know, as Dr. Watt said, we don't want to come here to see Europe. We already see that. We already know what's in America, you know, and you go to the market and you see all this plastic and clothes from America. We want to see clothes from Africa. You know, you'll see us wearing our African, and I wear African clothes every day. You know, I've been doing that since the early 70s, especially since I came back in 69. And I get criticized sometimes. I get odd looks, you know, about why are you wearing these African clothes, and I bet your legs are going to get light. You know, we can't see your legs. That's crazy stuff, you know. So, but you know that the culture, the arts, you know, is being used by other ethnic groups. You know, our music, our clothes, our language is being utilized throughout the globe. You know, but our people here in the diaspora don't understand how credible and how powerful our culture is, and in the culture there on the continent. Because, you know, when I talk to different people from the continent who come here and they say their name is Mary, their name is Joe, I said, what is your African name? You know, why you want to know? I said, because I have we got so many people here on the continent who want to have African names, and you want to come here and have Western names. Let's come together some kind of way. What is your African? What name did your mother give you? And then they'll open up and they'll tell me. And I said, what is the meaning? Because I gave every one of my children and grandchildren African names, and they all have meanings, you know, because that's what names are for. It's a part of your destiny, your name, and what you're called. And I think that we've been so miseducated about our culture. But I don't want to go to Africa and see that the culture is no longer there. The rites of passage that we learn from the continent, although we don't do everything that they do, but I started and co-founded a rites of passage group in 1984 for my children and other children that was a part of our school, because our girls and our boys need to go through a rites of passage. And I think that's still important today. All of our young boys and young girls, as they reach puberty, needs to go through a rites of passage. And so that's a part of that culture. And when you go, you know, we're trying to help some of those people in Ghana not too long ago reestablish their rites of passage. You know, I know there was some gross kind of things that were happening that we said that's no longer relevant today in these times. But we still need to understand that as a strong Black woman, whether you're in Africa or whether you're on the continent, you know, you are the one that's going to raise this culture up. You are the one that's going to raise the nation of Africa up. It's the women. You know, we were the first, and so we will be the last. So that's where I see this whole thing about culture is so key to our people, wherever we are on the planet.
And you know, the culture is very, very instrumental for the promotion of tourism.
Right.
And we like you said, I was very disappointed. I'm going to be honest. Remember, we went to the village, and I took you to the village of Obodo because we were so excited about it. Was a time for festival. So I thought that festival will have all these masquerades and all of that for you to see, and there was nothing.
You're talking about the yam festival? The yam
I couldn't believe it. I was very disappointed because at that time, that's usually what we do in our village. But all of that was gone, you know. So we have to. It's a global world. We understand that. There's no two ways about that. But we don't have to abandon our culture. We don't abandon what makes us who we are, you know, because we want to become industrialized. You know, industrialization has nothing to do with your culture. You can preserve that and become, you know, industrialized. I mean, we are industrialized, I say, yeah. But the problem I see about our advancement is that we advance in technology and everything else, but then we push our culture back. You see, and so something that we could use as another aspect of to build up our economy is just literally abandoned. You know, I have to admit there are some communities that are really building up their culture and traditions, and because they're seeing that they're building up their communities with that. You know, people are coming to see specific things that some different villages do. You know, we have to do more of that. We have to build up our culture to the point 21st century. That's what other people are doing. China, you go to China. China is not going to show you European. You know, you may go to a European hotel or something like that, themed hotel. But if you want to see China, they will take you to see China. You will see the dance of the dragons, and you know, I'm not saying it quite correctly, I'm sure, but you see everything that is associated with China. They don't make they make no excuses. But ours, when you go, you're looking for your tradition, and people are disappointed when they go. Now, the day that you were made a chief, that was beautiful, wasn't it, Dr. Nobantu? To see all the cultural dances and all that sort of thing. I think it's something that needs to be built up. Our ability to attract diaspora Africans also has to do with our ability to preserve our culture. Would you agree?
Totally. I agree with what Dr. Nobantu said and what you said. It's a very complex situation. And the reason why I say it's complex is because about African culture. You know, number one, you have to deal with the demonization of it. It is said that culture is the backbone of a people. But it's also known philosophically that all human systems are products of religion. Your culture is a product of your religion, spirituality, something that is primordial to you. We have to stop demonizing. Like I always say, right? I'm not telling people not to, you know, be Buddhist or aspire to any religion that they want to and all that stuff. In Chiism, our philosophy is every human being has a right to worship God the way they understand best without bitterness. So I definitely understand the right of human beings to do whatever it is that they want to do on a spiritual level. But I also understand that in order for you to have a wholesome tourist industry, your cultural or primordial religion has to be paramount, because all these systems come from it. Your economic system, social systems, justice system, legal system, all human systems that you need for nation building has to, you know, comes from your primordial spirituality. In Africa, when you come in from Africa and you check into a hotel, you might consider that a Western type thing. I don't, because I believe in human evolution. You still would have ended up with a hotel anyway. There's such a thing too called cross-cultural pollination. You borrow things from other cultures, you add to what you already have, and those things that are not relevant anymore, you get rid of them. Life is about evolution. Things evolve. We just never give ourselves a chance, or the Europeans or the colonization and slavery never give Africa the chance to evolve and join the rest of the world. But culture is what tourism is built on. I don't want to go to China. If I'm from New York and China looks like New York, would I want to go? If China doesn't have anything to offer me that is based on its culture and history, I don't care to go over there. This is not Dubai. If you live in Japan and you're Japanese and you were born in Japan, but Japan looks like, London, and you were born in, you're Japanese born in London, and Japan looks like London. Japan has nothing, to do with the shoguns and all that kind of stuff. Everything is gone. Would you want to go to Japan? Mm-hmm. Would you care? If I'm going to the United States and it looks like my village, why would I leave my village and go anywhere? We go to experience things that are different.
That's right.
All about. So to build a tourist industry in Africa, we must understand that, and it must have the blessings of various governments in Africa. This has to be like an institution. You remember when we were growing up, we have Festac. You could tell people about that experience where people from all over the world, Black folks from all over the world came to Africa to experience culture, to say, we are here. We love being African. This is what we're all about, and we're going to showcase it to the world as food for thought. And also, if we sustain it, the rest of the world, at least once a year, will come to Africa to experience these varied degrees of culture that is just so intoxicating and beautiful to watch. So Dr. Nobantu is absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. There has to be a concerted effort by Africans to promote their primordial culture, because if we do, tourism goes up. Tourism is the #1 economic instrument in the world. Just in the United States alone, billions of dollars are generated every year. Just through
so much has been lost right now because of the COVID. It has impacted the economy.
Yeah, it's impacted it. And let's not, think about this for a second. There are countries in this world that have a strong economy, and that economy is not based on industries. It's not based on manufacturing. It's not based on going to the moon or anything like that. It's based on tourism. I'll give you an example. Jamaica. What does Jamaica have to offer the world if it's not tourism? And whatever product that they develop in Jamaica and ship outside, all those products are based on something cultural in Jamaica. There are so many other nations in the world, especially in the Caribbean and what have you, who have, great economies that are based on tourism. So that is one part of African economics that we are negating and haven't really done anything. I think there are just very few countries in Africa that really have a strong tourist industry. One of them is Kenya, and it's not because of the primordial nature of things in Kenya. It's really based on wild animals and the what do you call them?
Safari.
The tribe, and they maintain that culture, and people want to go there and experience. Then you have the Zulu culture in South Africa, where people just want to go there. The Shaka Zulu thing did us a lot of good because that movie really promoted that, African spirit of strength, based on the life of Shaka Zulu and all that. And then, of course, you have Egypt, that is a mixture of Alexandrian culture, Egyptian culture, and all that kind of stuff. Beyond those three areas that I just mentioned now, which other area in Africa that has a boom in tourism? There's only one other country or two other countries that are making attempts to, kind of show up their tourist industry. That is Senegal and Ghana. And the reason why is because both countries are, at least to a certain degree, promoting their primordial culture. In Senegal is usually their traditional wrestling. And then, of course, they put up a statue over there that is the biggest statue in Africa and one of the largest statues in the world. And people are coming from all over the world just to experience that. Then you have Ghana, the Ashanti culture, the Ghanaian kings, the gold, and all that kind of stuff. And I think, in a way, the commitment of a lot of Ghanaians to showcase Ghanaian culture to the rest of the world. right? To attract people. So people go to experience things that they haven't experienced before. Most African Americans or diasporan Africans want to come back to Africa to experience what they feel was taken away from them. They want to see what Africa is really all about. Get rid of what is not working anymore in the 21st century. Maintain those things that will bring you the dollars, if I may be very blunt. Yes. Because it takes money to evangelize. If you create opportunities using tourism, artisans carving, people, hotels coming up, people doing all kinds of things on the economic level to show up the tourist industry of a particular territory, I'm telling you, Africa will be on its way to greatness.
Well, it has been a wonderful, we could go on and on, but I want to thank both of you, my co-host, Dibia Ochoada, UD Onyoha. Thank you so much for being here, Chief Doctor. I always have to remember to make sure that I add that. Chief Dr. Ankoanda, Nobantu. Nobantu, you didn't really tell us what Nobantu stands for. I've always been curious about that.
Nobantu means mother of humanity. Ankoanda means sleepless until the battle is won.
Oh, yes. That sounds just like you.
That name was given to me by a professor from South Africa.
Oh, my goodness. How wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. You shared a lot of wonderful information. And as a matter of fact, we're going to do another segment on this so that we can bring back Dr. Sophia Chrocheron, because she has a lot to tell us about life in Ghana and some of the ideas and recommendations that she has. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be welcomed into your home. This is the end of another session of Cheesing Live. I want to remind you to please go to our YouTube channel, the Cheesing of Africa, and subscribe and like make comments of what you think about our recording today. We can't do this by ourselves. We need you to participate. And again, I'd like you also to please visit our Facebook page, Global Faith. I'm drawing a blank. Global Faith Ministries of Cheesing. Please go and help us with the fundraising that we're doing there. We're doing the Onyinye Project, which is giving. The part of our foundation, part of the philosophy of our organization is to give to those who need help. So Onyinye is to give, and we ask you to please give because we feed people. We've been feeding 200 people every week. We want to extend that to 1,000 people every week. So please visit us there, and also again visit our YouTube channel. And that will do it for today. Oh, I just want to mention that next week our show is going to be an exciting one because we are going to bring in Dr. Imani Ma'at, who is a Harvard-trained health educator, who is going to share information about why it's very, very important that we take care of this sacred body, this temple. That's who we are, the temple of God, and what we put in it certainly will determine how healthy we are. So we would love to see you join us next time. Dr. Nobantu, Dibia UD, thank you so very much for joining us, and you all have a wonderful day.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.